Hi all, my name is Paige Wiley. I'm the co-author of Worked Up, Navigating Calling After College, and today I want to talk about the myth of work as a necessary evil. Now this is kind of a narrative or a myth that you might have already seen in our culture before. It's kind of the TGIF or the I hate Mondays or the working for the weekend sentiment. That work is this thing that we've just sludged through in order to get to the good part of the week, whether that's for the weekend or for Tuesday nights or for time with friends or family outside of this work environment. Unfortunately, some of this distortion also, I think, comes from the church. I think sometimes we've been guilty of starting in Genesis 3 when we talk about work. This is, of course, the curse after the fall of Adam and Eve, after sin has entered the world. We talk through work as something that is frustrated and something that is distorted and toilsome and hard, that we kind of all want to collectively say, man, work is hard and we kind of got to get through it to the rest of whatever it is we're working for. And I think sometimes these are well-intended. I think that we have the attitude that we want to work in order to support our families or to give to organizations that matter to us or to tithe to the church. I don't think that these are bad things to think through, but I think sometimes that they underestimate what work was intended to be from the beginning. So I would love to go back to the beginning, to Genesis 1, to start in the first chapter of the 4-chapter gospel. I want to remind you that the 4-chapter gospel is creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. That we're not starting in chapter 2 anymore, but we're going back to chapter 1 and seeing what God's original design was like. So in verse 28 of Genesis 1, God says, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves on the ground." This is God's introduction, essentially, to us, that he bestows on us this command yet gift to co-cultivate and co-steward the earth with him, that we were meant to take what I like to call these good ingredients of the world around us and to make culture with them, to take care of the world, to take care of the people in it, and to just continue building culture and making beauty out of what God has given us. If we see work that existed before the fall and work that existed after the fall, we can kind of understand why this tension exists, right? That even if we believe this first chapter narrative, it's still hard because work is hard, right? And I think that those are an okay thing. Those are okay things to see and observe. I think that we can all raise a hand and say, I've had a frustrating day at work, right? I think it's one of those places that we can sometimes see that this is not what it was intended to be. However, I think when we see work as it was originally designed, I think it helps us to flip the narrative of what work could be. I like to say that work is affected by the curse, but it is not itself the curse. That it is frustrating, but it is not the frustration as cause of punishment from the fall of man. It existed as a part of God's original design, and it was meant to be good. And I would even go farther, that it was made for us as a way to image God. If we view things this way, how can work look different? How can it be celebrated and encouraged and even be seen as a blessing, perhaps to be good and fruitful and helpful to the people around us, even spiritual? I think this is really easy to say when you're in a job that you like, right? Maybe it's easy for those people that knew what they wanted to do from the point that they were 5, and they're doing exactly what they feel called to do, and work feels like a blessing in itself. And that's great. That's awesome for those people. But I think sometimes when we're in jobs that we don't feel that in, that we feel frustrated, that we feel that toil, it's hard to kind of put these into practice, right? My first job out of college was in retail, and I will be probably the first person to tell you that I don't think I was made to do retail for the rest of my life. That was a job that felt very frustrating at many points in time. But I remember one specific day when I woke up and I was on my way to work, and I was thinking, every 1-minute interaction I have when somebody comes up to my cash register, I'm checking them out, I want to make it a little bit better than that 1 minute before they were with me. I want to be able to ask them about their day and ask them how to make it better, and just ask them and see them as people, and try to make the most of every one of those interactions. That day I had a 12-hour shift, and it was long and it was hard, but I do remember coming out of it thinking that that was one of the most soul-filling days that I had ever had. That even though it was just retail, that it felt incredibly rewarding, and it felt like I had done something to make the world a little bit better that day. One of the last things I'll leave you with is just a quote from the book that is about flipping this narrative. And it says, "If we view this blessing of work as a curse, our work will show it. But if we understand that work was intended to be in the beginning, what it was intended to be for us, it will inform how we work in a world longing for cultivation, restoration, and renewal."